Welcome everybody. First things first, as always, if I could just get a quick audio visual check, please. Let me know you can see my charts clearly and you can hear me all right. How are you all doing this fine day, wherever you are out there? After a quick confirmation, just so I know I'm not talking to myself, I don't have anything muted, we can get started. Some interesting developments with Bitcoin, obviously. Nice to see some green price action the last few days. I was actually away for a few days. I didn't even have a reception on my phone for most of it, so I actually didn't see a lot of it, but still have a few positions open and that sort of things. Waiting the STUBER fibs, I'll bring up as many as I can in a short amount of time. But yeah, guys, let me know if you can hear me, see everything clearly. Dan, good to see you. Welcome back, my friend. I'm pretty sure that it is all working here. So, all right. I will take that as a good sign. So let's hop right in. So thank you very much, guys. I mean, well, Bitcoin has been climbing nicely, but there's still a few warning signs that I just can't bring myself to ignore, you guys. However, that being said, I do want to talk about both the bullish and bearish scenarios, a few important levels for me that I'm watching, and so on. So with that, let's hop right into the 4-hour. I'm going to take a look at the midterm trend here. Let me just hop over here. So guys, one thing that I want to mention is the midterm was actually looking quite good, in my opinion, for quite a while. I mean, ever since that we had that bottoming formation, we ended up breaking my lower high structure here. That was a great sign. My downtrend, as far as the midterm goes, was invalidated as we got this nice breakout here. Love to see that from a bullish perspective, because I know a lot of you guys are just familiar with me mostly being a perma bear. I promise I just like everybody else, I want a parabolic run, you guys. I would love to see it, and I do see reasons why it could happen. But at the same time, I'm not going to just blindly ignore my own analysis. And so there's a few things that I do want to go over here. Cause, good to see you here. Yeah, so basically, guys, as we had this uptrend, we basically started forming a series of higher highs and higher lows. And even when we got into this range here, notice that, well, my white lines here are basically where we had a structure change, right? Because we had this high, we got a higher high here, therefore we had a confirmed higher low. We then got a higher high, confirmed higher low. Another higher high, and this is where I always mention that it's a little bit of micro analyzing, but it is what it is. We did push a little bit higher, and then that confirms our higher low here, and we did end up breaking this. Now, I mentioned in my Telegram group, you guys, that I actually, full disclosure, I ended up taking a bit of a loss. I took a hedge long down at the STUBER fib on the 1 hour, because you know what? That's just a typical setup. The fact that we had this high, we had a higher high, we had our higher low. I laddered in some entries as we got closer down towards my 115, but basically starting at the 786. When we got this little bounce here, I had mentioned in the group that I was very close to getting stopped out here. And the fact that we even dropped below the 115 at all, I always leave a little bit of wiggle room past that. I go over that all the time. But when we ended up getting this bounce here, basically I cut my position in half, basically around break even. And my reasoning for that was this was just a warning sign to me. And also the fact that it wasn't just a wick down below the one towards the 115. We actually had candle bodies closing down here. That was a sign of weakness for me. So although, yes, the setup was still there technically, there was added risk involved to that. So I did downsize my position, and I also kept a part of my position open. I have a short from up here still, 97. What is that at? 97,669, I believe it is. Yeah, 97,669. That was just based off a 5-minute STUBER fib setup. Nothing different about that. Honestly, it was meant to be a scalp. But as I always go over, I like to take profits along the way, and I like to keep part of my position running just in case it turns into something like this. So I do have a little bit running. Yes, I've paid myself on a bunch of it, so it's fine either way at this point. But yeah, like I said, I don't win every single trade, just like any trade setup. I mean, sometimes they get invalidated, but that's where I would way rather be laddering in longs on something like this than to just taking a YOLO breakout long from up here, right? Invalidation from this significantly further than getting an average entry somewhere in here and then taking this small loss. So it is what it is. Trading isn't about never losing trades. It's about controlling those losses when they happen. And like I said, I was already in a short. This was more of a hedge than anything, just in case that uptrend continued. But I had also mentioned that, on the 4-hour, we got some weakness here. This uptrend, like I said, I mean, this uptrend basically held since we bottomed around, what was that, 70, call it 74, 75K, somewhere in there. Since bottoming, we've held this uptrend on the 4-hour. And at this point, I had pointed out that, hey, here's our first sign of weakness on the midterm time frame, being the 4-hour. Since breaking the downtrend we have now at this point invalidated the uptrend on the micro trend that we had. So that was a big warning for me. Unfortunately, we never did get that bounce yet up to the STUBER fib there. Obviously, the fib has changed since then. I just wanted to leave it up for this demonstration here. But yeah, unfortunately, never got additional shorts up in this level before continuing down. But either way, the structure was there. We did start a bit of a midterm downtrend at that point. And basically, we haven't broke that yet on the 4-hour. Even if we're just micro analyzing from where we pivoted here, we just kept setting lower lows and lower highs. Lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high. And since this high and this low have not been invalidated yet, this is currently the range that we have on the 4-hour. Sorry, I'm just going to get rid of a few things. I am also going to delete this because it is no longer valid. But basically, if this micro downtrend is going to continue with this low, lower, low, lower, high, we would be looking at this sort of a range, and it would be favoring the downside because that's where the trend is going at this point. But again, if this ends up getting invalidated, then whatever, then we can continue to the upside, or at the very least, if we end up invalidating this type of setup and we break this micro trend, at that point, that's where I would start looking for a new fib pulled from the top of the range where we got our pivot, because we did have this structure break here. So at this time, and this will change if the price goes lower, the fib would obviously extend. It would chase the price down further. But if we end up breaking above this, then at that point, we start pulling fibs to the upside and looking for those pullbacks to long rather than looking for the bounces to short, basically. So, and everyone has their own preferences. I'm still focused I am still definitely carrying a bit of a bearish bias, you guys. But again, there is things to consider, like the weekly chart. You know what? I think we can absolutely go higher. I still have concerns with the weekly chart. Why this doesn't necessarily mean we're bullish, but this could just be a typical STUBER fib setup. For example, if this was the 5-minute chart, the fact that we broke this structure here, it would be very typical if this was any other time frame that we would sweep the lows, then we get some sort of a retrace and retest those resistance levels. That would be a very typical setup for me to short on a lower time frame. And even though it's a weekly and it feels like that won't happen, and that if we go this high again, we're guaranteed all-time highs, that's not necessarily the case because structure has changed quite a bit. Absolutely open to the idea of it happening, you guys. If we end up closing candle bodies above our all-time high, at that point, I would love to be a moon boy again. But there's just a few concerns I have with that and why I'm not so sure it's going to happen. One would be on the weekly. Obviously, I have my eyes open, and this would probably take 2 or 3 more weeks to even confirm this potential setup. But I just kind of want everyone to be aware that it's a possibility coming up, just like I was warning back here that there was potential for this double top with this exact bearish divergence, right? And something I'm watching for now basically is, even though we have broke my divergence trend line, if we end up trading back into resistance here, anywhere from the 786 and up, if we trade into that level and the RSI just ends up getting that same bearish divergence, I am going to have very large concerns with this market once again, because I mean, every time I've called this out on the weekly, I mean, you guys, many of you will be familiar. I was saying the same thing back here, and a lot of people are saying I was wrong because we went higher. Guys, if calling a bearish price action and it dumps over 30%. If that is incorrect to you, I'm sorry. That's a very large move to the downside either way, even if you're a swing trader. I'm more of a scalper, so that's a huge trade. But even for those who are swing trading, that's a massive trade as well. So I'm just kind of looking at something very similar. So the fact that we got a 30% correction there, same thing, same divergence. We got a 30% correction there. My concern is if we end up getting the same type of divergence, but a much, much larger one, at that point, it's starting to look a lot more like our previous market cycle where we got one very similar, right? Where we got that massive bearish divergence there. And that was, in fact, the cycle ender at that point. So that is a huge concern of mine. And also zooming out a little bit further to the monthly chart, you guys, I know I've pointed this out in my last several streams, but these order blocks, these monthly order blocks, every time Bitcoin in the last, well, over 10 years now, the only few times that this has happened, it has been a full-on reversal. And that goes for the bullish and the bearish side, okay? I'm not picking favorites at this point. This is just straight up looking at this chart for what it is. Every time we've had one of these order blocks broken and reclaimed, retested basically as a support resist flip, they have been complete reversals. We went absolutely parabolic after breaking this one bullishly, just like we went absolutely parabolic after we broke this one bullishly. Just like we went parabolic after we broke this one bullishly. But back here, we had the only other bearish one in Bitcoin's history was right here. And obviously, yeah, we had an initial dump to the downside before that. But when we ended up bouncing, we ended up losing that block. And it was a big continuation to the downside with that bear market. And right now, notice that this is the first time in this market cycle and the second time in Bitcoin's history that we have seen a bearish one like this. And so far, just notice where we are starting to struggle a little bit, right? If the bulls are able to reclaim this box, this is where I said, there's some potential bullish things happening. If we end up reclaiming this support here, at that point, I'm absolutely open to the idea that, maybe things aren't as bad as I'm seeing right now. But the fact is that we have broken below this block and we are currently struggling in that support resist flip. And remember, yeah, we wicked above a little bit for a day or so, but notice that happened back here in this market cycle as well. And eventually it got rejected. So yes, this is a monthly chart. It would take a long time. Unfortunately, this monthly candle really only started a few days ago. There is plenty of time for this to do anything, you guys. So this is a macro view, right? Understand that when I'm saying on the monthly, this looks very concerning to me. That does not mean that we have to dump right now. It doesn't mean we have to dump tomorrow or even next week. This is just something that I'm looking for. We don't really have a confirmation right now other than we are struggling at that support resist flip. So if we can flip that back into support again, you know what, at that point, things look quite good for the bulls, in my opinion. But as it stands right now, I still have that major concern. On top of that, for a little additional confluence, I know I've pointed this out, just go over it very quickly, but the MDX Wave Master, anytime we've got a bearish or a bullish cross on this indicator, it has been basically a perfect reversal, even more so than those order blocks. And we did have this just a couple months ago when we ended up getting this big engulfing candle and then confirming the next monthly candle, just respecting that SR flip there on top of getting this bearish cross on the Wave Master. Very, very scary in my opinion, because this is a huge momentum indicator. It's very good at noticing momentum. And obviously, as you can see, every time it's happened on the monthly time frame here, you've seen what it has done. So doesn't have to happen again. Obviously, nothing has to happen 100% of the time, but so far, these two things on the monthly, as far as Bitcoin's history goes, they have never been wrong. And I like to trade the charts and the probabilities that are here rather than trading tweets and fundamentals and things in the economy that I may be misunderstanding. I'd rather draw colorful lines and trade them. So those are some huge concerns for me. But you know what? We'll see what happens there. The weekly here, like I said, we're going to have to watch for that. There is still some bullish sentiment here. Again, the Wave Master, we do have this bullish pivot here. And we did break this structure here. We did break my RSI downtrend. So it is what it is. There's mixed signals right now, depending what time frame you want to be on, basically, right? So yeah, I have my concerns with the longer time frame, but the shorter term, the midterm looks okay. But like I said, we got our first sign of weakness here. The hourly, like I said, full disclosure, I did lose a hedge long there, but whatever. I've got a couple shorts on the way still. The 1 minute here, we printed this higher low here, so I know not everybody here is scalpers. I do tend to trade the shorter time frame much more than the longer time frame. I do swing at the odd 4 hour and 1 hour setup, but for the most part, I'm trading the 5 minute. That's kind of my sweet spot, what I like. But here's on the 1 minute, just to really zoom in here. We do have this little bit of an uptrend on the lower time frames, right? The fact that the MDX Trendmaster indicator, we have higher printing sell signals. So even though it's a sell signal, it is higher. So there is still a trend to the upside. Same with the buy signals. They are trending to the upside. If we were looking for some sort of a scalp entry, I would basically be looking at this as our current support, just basically the lowest point between this peak and this peak here. And I just, rather than FOMOing into a long up at these levels with this breakout, I would always rather wait for some sort of a pullback. And that's where I generally like to pull my Fibonacci's, right? So I would be looking at something like this if looking for a long scalp setup. Personally, I'm still leaning a little bit more bearish, like I was talking about. I would love to be bullish again, you guys. And it's just that I can't completely ignore things. I'm not going to fall into an echo chamber of just completely ignoring something like a monthly time frame or a weekly time frame and pretending that structure doesn't matter. Because if anything, a longer time frame like that, it carries more weight. It's harder to change the momentum of that, which is why it's such a big deal to me that the momentum on the monthly has shifted bearish. It's not like I'm entering a short right now based on that, right? That's just something to consider for the long-term trend. Does it make sense that we go parabolic? We could, right? All we have to do is invalidate some of these theories. We start staircasing higher again. At that point, we start longing dips. That's totally fine, you guys. I have been mega bullish, basically from 18K up to 100K. I was very bullish, and people were arguing with me down here when I was saying that I think that we have actually got our bottom in. People were saying we were going down to 10K to 5K, ridiculous targets and that sort of thing. I was very openly bullish, that very vocally bullish, that I thought, things were reversing. And again, it's not that I was trading the weekly or the monthly time frame, but it just goes to show that people have a hard time accepting that a trend may be shifting. And it's not even saying, guys, I'm not saying sell all your crypto. Understand this as well. I still hold most of my crypto. As far as trading to make money on my day-to-day life, I don't care which way we're going. I'm not glued to a moon boy mentality. I would rather just be able to pay myself and pay my bills more so than I care about being right. I mean, trading and weatherman is basically your two jobs where you can be wrong and you can still make money if you have a strategy in place, how to trade. At the end of the day, being right doesn't matter if you don't have any sort of trading strategy. If you don't know how to limit your risk, you don't know how to ladder into positions, you don't know how to execute a trade, all that sort of stuff, you guys. And when I talk about market structure, how I pull Fibonacci's, just some of my favorite trading strategies, some of my trade setups that I'm looking ahead towards, just my overall thoughts on the markets in general, you guys, if that is something that interests you, there is a QR code on the screen you can scan. There's also a link with steps in the description down below if that's something that interests you. It's free to join as long as you sign up to the BloFin exchange using my link, and trading under me basically is so that's your way to get in for free and just kind of get my thoughts on the market. And like I said, some of my favorite trading strategies and all that sort of stuff. I will start going through the comments in a little bit here. I just want to go over my last couple of things. So far, yeah, I don't know if actually it looks like we got a little mini STUBER, but again, it was such a small one, such a small scalp there. Obviously not too many people would have been interested in taking something like that. But same thing, right? We set our low, we set our lower low. lower high, pull a fib, boom, 786, 886, but whatever. That was just a very small range. Most people wouldn't even want to play something like that. Just showing you how it doesn't really matter. Structure works the same. It doesn't matter if it's a 1 minute, a 5 minute, a 4 hour, a daily, a weekly, a monthly. Chart structure generally acts the same, and I treat it all the same. The only thing that matters is basically, if you're pulling a fib looking for an entry, remember what range you actually pulled the fib for, because a lot of people will, let's say, enter, for example, something like this. And I totally understand where you're coming from, but let's just say you took that scalp short there, you take the entry right here, but you completely ignore the first and second take profits because they're so small. That's user error. That's not the strategy's fault. That just means that you're pulling way too small of a range and you're not actually willing to trade the setup the way that it is. So it is what it is, right? But yeah, that being said, guys, like I said, mixed feelings depending what time frame I'm looking at. It's the unfortunate part is when in doubt, zoom out. And when I zoom out to the monthly is when I get most bearish. But I am happy to be wrong about this. I would love for it to absolutely moon because, like I said, I still hold most of my crypto. Okay. I only, when we were at around 100K or even 110K, whenever I initially, because I was calling for January 20th to be the top, basically with a STUBER fib setup. When we were somewhere between 100 and 110K, I basically sold about 10 to 15% of my spot portfolio. Other than that, I'm still holding on to it because if I'm wrong about my theories, that's the thing. Trading isn't about being right every time. Trading is about being able to protect yourself, knowing, having a backup plan. What happens if you're wrong? And a lot of people are not willing to be wrong. And that's why they struggle at actually making gains in this market, because they just can't accept the fact that they're wrong, have no idea how to use risk management, and just have some sort of invalidation in place, something systematic that you can repeat over and over, right? Let me just catch up with some of the chat here. Thank you guys for being here with me. It is just a very quick market update. I won't be here too long, but if you guys do appreciate my level-headed approach to things rather than, getting too excited one way or the other, you appreciate seeing some of my personal trading strategies and that sort of thing, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss these live streams. And like I said, if you want more active updates when I can't stream or I'm away from the house, whatever, do yourselves a favor, scan the QR code, get in the Telegram chat. I've been very busy the last couple weeks, still keeping you guys up to date a little bit there, but planning to start posting there a whole bunch once again. But yeah, let me catch up on the old chat here. What kind of car do you drive? I actually don't drive a car. More of a SUV truck guy, but I am, if I get the signal that I am planning to, or that I'm kind of warning about on the weekly chart, I will be taking a little bit more profits and buying a new truck. So just waiting for that confirmation, basically. After listening to all the bullish sentiment in the mornings, it's fun to tune into your videos to get the bearish sentiment. And that's exactly it, right? Denny Sheldon. That's exactly it. It is nice to see both sides. And as a trader, honestly, if you're not looking at both sides and considering that either scenario could have, that's a very dangerous game to play. If you are just so locked into, you know what, my guy is in office and he's going to tweet something someday and it's going to be great. Understand that, since January, we have had so much bullish fundamentals rammed down our throats constantly and promises that have been made. But rather than, when those bullish things happen, rather than setting a slightly higher high on the trend, we are bouncing and getting lower highs. That is very similar to how the last couple of bear markets have been. And for those of you who haven't been through a bear market before, eventually, even if it doesn't happen right now, if you haven't been through one before, you will eventually be blindsided by it. So if anything, I'm not even talking about this as, it's not so much that I'm extremely bearish at this level. It's just that I'm leaning a little bit bearish because we're getting closer to resistance. I would always rather be a seller at resistance and a buyer at support. But we're going to have to see what happens. Like, honestly, if we end up getting this sort of a pullback here, a lot of people are going to be very bearish as we get towards support. And even though I see the possibilities that we continue dumping through that floor and set lower lows, I would still be looking for long entries for some sort of a play. Even and as soon as we got some sort of a bounce there, everyone would be screaming the bottom's in, all-time highs are around the corner. You see it every freaking time. But just understand that, you know, everyone loves to get very bearish at support and everyone loves to get very bullish at resistance. So that is something to consider. And that's why these Fibonacci pockets are such strong bull traps and bear traps. You know, because it's getting so close to those levels where people start to panic. And people would, you know, if people are in a short from here, they would cut their losses here when that's where they should more so be looking at starting to ladder a position. They would rather cut their loss because, oh, I might get stopped out. Well, at that point, let it get stopped out. You know, obviously on weekly, that's a very big range. But if it's a shorter time frame, I mean, you should be more so looking at entering. The closer you get to your invalidation means you have that much smaller of a loss. So even if you take some losses, you know, the risk reward is there on that kind of a thing. So again, obviously it depends on the trader, depends on your trading strategy. Everyone trades completely different. We could have the same trend lines, the same indicators, absolutely everything laid out perfectly the same. And I promise you, we would trade this market completely different. So you know, that's where using the replay feature on Tradingview is so important. You know, it may not be sexy, it may not be fun, but it is important to do your homework. That's basically all there is to it. Right now, getting a little bit of a bounce here. Good to see. Like I said, we have this higher low signal that printed here. I would still rather see us come down to this level down here before I'm interested in taking another hedge long at all. And that doesn't mean that we're going to get there, right? That's a part of trading as well. You don't always get the setup that you want to, but I would just rather wait for my ideal setup to take the trade that I want rather than just, you know, oh, I think we're going to go to the upside here. Even though I think that it makes sense, we could come down here and get a much better entry. I'm just going to FOMO in right now. That's not how I like to trade. So I would rather just wait for the systematic trade strategy that I've laid out for myself and created for myself and back tested myself and had good results for myself. I'm going to wait for those setups. So I don't really care if I miss this. If we just end up blasting through to the upside, I really don't care. Guys, I still have a short open from $101,626. I still have a short open from $97,669. So I still have two nice running positions at this point. I have taken profits on 3/4 of both of those, but I still have a chunk running because, again, if the market dumps, I don't want to be panicking and shorting into support like a lot of people are going to do. So that's how I like to trade. That being said, guys, as far as bullish sentiment here, you know, we do have a higher buy signal now on the 1 minute again. So as long as this trend is going to continue, you know, we should have some support here. I'm just not interested in that long right now at all. Like I said, I'm just more so waiting for a STUBER setup down here if it happens. If it doesn't, then I don't take a long. That's totally fine. I'm getting into the evening here. I'm going to cook up some steaks right away and have a beer. And, you know, if I don't take another trade today, I really don't care. I can sleep good. That's totally fine. What are my thoughts on the BTC on the 5 minute? I guess I was looking more so at the 1 minute there. 5 minute would be very similar. Let me just wait for a couple things to show up here. Yes, actually the exact same thing, right? We have higher trending sell signals. We have higher trending buy signals. We have, with the AI charting tools indicator, we have a higher low here with a higher high up here. I love using that as confluence when looking for Fibonacci pulls. So that also lines up with my theory that, you know, I'd rather wait for a setup down here. I think it's very possible. Again, does not have to happen, but that's kind of the setup I'm looking for. And at that point, that will just be a hedge. So honestly, I will be heavier on the short side of things between those two positions that are still running. So I will, even though I'll be taking along there, I will be best case scenario. I'll be hoping for a short-term bounce, hit a couple targets and then reverse. or even if it just goes straight down and just reverses, you know what? My shorts are going to outperform that long either way. So we're just going to have to see what happens. ALGO master indicator, notice that its automatic Fibonacci's line up with mine. I love to see that as additional confluence as well. And again, just another reason why I think we could pull down to this box down here, because I have several indicators now lining up with that theory. The trend master, the fact that we have this buy signal here, where's our pivot point from that? That would be down here as well at this higher low. So there's actually 3 indicators lining up with this Fibonacci pull. Again, doesn't mean it has to happen, but it's there, and that's the one that I'm mostly interested in is all. Oh, Thumbcase, good to see you in here again, buddy. How about the historic logarithmic chart? You know, I guess that would be this weekly one. Is it even still? Yeah, it is still logarithmic. So I did already look at that one. I just haven't actually. So that's another thing that I want to point out, you guys, is this is going to be a very theoretical pull just because you asked, and it's the historic log chart here. It's going to remove everything. Let's talk about if we get a very bearish scenario, right? Let's pretend, and this could go either way, but let's just say I'm correct about this, and you know, this SR flip of this order block, this momentum flip on the wave master indicator, if this is correct and we enter a bear market, it would take a while to play out, obviously, but if this does send us into a bear market, the prices that I would be looking at would be significantly lower than most people want to entertain. And honestly, a lot of people are going to be triggered just by me even pointing this out. But if this was a 5-minute chart, you know what I would be looking at? I would be looking at a STUBER fib, because like I said, I don't care about time frames. All that I care about is market structure, and how market structure loves to act the same on all time frames. This is very theoretical because I still don't know if we are in a bear market, but if we are, it makes a lot of sense that we would pull down all the way down here. I don't want to scare anybody. I'm looking at that. Honestly, that would be such a good opportunity. I hope it happens. I don't necessarily think I'm lucky enough to get another shot at buying this level, but we're going to see. And before you tell me that, before you laugh and say that that can't happen, well, let's just check some previous market cycles. Let's go from this market low to that market high. Where did we find support? Oh, right above the 786 there. Would you look at that? The weekly is acting just like a classic 5-minute STUBER setup. Let's go to the market cycle before. Let's go to from this low to this high. Where do we end up finding support? Right in the middle of that STUBER fib. You know, let's just go to the very first one. Actually, I can't remember if this is one or not, but yeah, look at that. We end up coming very close to the 886. So guys, I know it always feels like this market cycle is different. And I know you've probably heard people say that, oh, there's so much money coming into the space. This cycle's different. Every single market cycle to date has had exponentially larger players getting into the space. You know, we heard the same thing last cycle. This cycle's different. It's a super cycle. Hedge funds are getting involved, blah, blah, blah. Well, it did the exact same thing. Eventually, we had our bear market. We pulled back to the STUBER fibs. And from there, it was bull market on. Everyone got very scared at those levels. I turned into a buyer at those levels, just like any time frame. And again, I was quite bullish for, well, a year and a half, I think it was. And now I'm just cautious. Like I said, it's not even that I know I lean towards the bearish side right now, but I'm mostly just being cautious and willing to take some profits and willing to trade the downside for my day-to-day expenses, paying my bills. So that's more so why I'm open to the idea of trading the downside and zooming out and looking at things like this. Sure, it may not happen, but being able to zoom out and, you know, detach your emotions from things and consider the possibilities that you could be wrong about something on the shorter time frames, whatever, right? Just like right now, you know, something that's catching my eye right now, and I know I've seen other people post about this as well, but one thing that I will give credit to the bulls, where you'll give credit where credit is due, this SR flip right here, you know, that's a very nice structure break right there. And the fact that we retested it so perfectly, I can't argue with that. That is a very nice sign. Like I said, I will give the possible bullish scenarios here. So if we just end up blasting off from here and it's not just a dead cat, a reaction rally of some kind, and we actually start staircasing higher, I will be looking to long every single one of those dips, basically something like so, right? Looking for those 786, 886 retracements. That doesn't mean they're always going to happen, but on the lower time frames, generally you see many every single day. So, yeah, like I said, there's a few bullish scenarios there, but there is a lot of big red flags as well. So I personally think as we trade closer to resistance, it's just time to be cautious rather than FOMOing long right into resistance. Cause that's the thing, right? Like I said, perfect bear traps areas, or in this case, bull trap area. Sorry. If I pull a fib from here, from this range break that we had, pretending this is a 5-minute chart or 1 hour or 4 hour or anything else, I would be looking at that retracement up to these levels. And until that gets invalidated. If people think, a lot of people are going to start FOMOing longs into that resistance, and they're going to be saying to me, well, Stu, what if you miss this move? Understand that, first of all, if we break this level, we're probably pulling back down to the same level. So I would rather have a confirmation before I jump to conclusions with that, which is why I'm still cautious at this point, is because I'm waiting for confirmations, right? Like any trader should. But another thing is, if you're so worried about missing an absolutely phenomenal parabolic run, this cycle's different, it's going to be a super cycle, et cetera, and you're really worried about missing that 7 or 8%, as we trade into resistance here. Actually, let me start at the 786 up to above our all-time highs. So let's call it, 8, 9, even 10%. If you're seriously that worried about missing that minuscule amount of profit, then you do not have very much faith in this super cycle you're talking about. And that's exactly why I don't care if I miss some of this move. If this is going to go parabolic, my spot bags are going to do fantastic. My longs on pullbacks after that are going to do fantastic while that trend sticks. But at this point, I just don't have those confirmations yet. So I'm just a little bit cautious and still willing to look at things from both sides at this point. That's all. That's it, you guys. I'm not saying we have to go to zero. I'm not saying we have to be in a bear market right now. But just understand that there is some warning signs there that say it's at least possible. And I don't like to totally blind myself just because I think I don't want to look at trading as what I want to happen. I like looking for the trades that I know I have easy profits coming up. I shouldn't say no, because obviously every trade setup, every trade strategy does take losses as well, but it's having those controlled losses and also just looking for those easy systematic setups that, hey, you know what, if this happens, I'm taking the trade because my back testing says that overall it does well, right? Why not sell spot if I think it's going to low bear market levels? Because like I said, as a trader, I'm willing to be wrong, right? I treat my investments and I treat my trading job completely different. I will trade either direction. I'm not worried about Bitcoin, you guys. That's the thing too. Understand that so many people are bullish, or I'm going to use quotations, bullish, until the price changes and a bear market comes, and then all of a sudden they leave the market and you never hear from them again. And everyone says that won't be them. That won't be them. It's always them. Understand that I'm so bullish. I've been through 2 bear markets. Okay. Understand that I have been through 2 bear markets, and I know that they do happen. And no matter how you feel about the market does not give a shit about your opinions, and mine included. So I could be wrong about this. I'm just open to the idea of, does it make sense? Can I still trade the downside? Like I said earlier, if I get my confirmation on the weekly chart, I'm taking some profits and I'm buying a new truck. So yes, I am willing to take profits, but I'm waiting for certain things to happen. I did sell part of my spot bag earlier in the year because I had the same feeling. But again, if I'm wrong, if I'm trading the bearish side with leverage to make money on my day-to-day, what happens if that ends up blasting through the upside? Well, then I still have my spot bags, right? I am bullish enough on crypto because, guys, as I sound bearish, I want to be very clear. I am so fucking bullish on crypto. Okay, as a whole, I am so fucking bullish. But I am one of those guys who, rather than panicking in a bear market, I will have a bunch of limit orders set, and I will be buying crypto at the bottom the whole way down. And a lot of people are going to totally miss that. They're going to leave until the media starts talking about it and so on. So I like to say that, you know, the people who pretend to be bullish right now are only bullish while the price is bullish. Whereas I use crypto every single day. I trade crypto basically every single day. I love looking at charts every day. I love everything about crypto. I love the volatility. And that's the thing. I love that it goes both ways. I love that it's volatile. I am just, as a whole, very, very bullish on crypto. So I want to put any of those judgments aside right now. Understand that I will always be bullish, but I will trade things bearishly because I'm a trader, not a moon boy. How is Sui looking on the daily and weekly chart? I can take a look at those in a second. Should I buy more USD right now, Stu? Can you check the DXY chart? I can check the DXY chart as well. I will check Sui first. When is alt season? I have mixed feelings about that. Quite honestly, very mixed feelings about the whole altcoin season. I will go into that in a second here. One sec. Daily and weekly, you said? Daily on Sui. That was a nice little pump there. This is very messy. This will, I promise you, be micro-analyzing. But technically, we did get this swing fail here where we went slightly higher. And we have lost that low there. And this is the daily, right? So as far as a micro-sized range on the daily, so it's still quite large, obviously, I would be looking at something like this where, you know, we have to start being careful when the price gets back up to these levels here, which would be around $3.70, basically all the way up towards $3.87. Some very serious resistance there. That doesn't mean we can't climb higher, because understand we did break the micro trend, or the midterm trend rather, where we had this low, lower high. We've obviously broke that. So at this point, it does still make sense that we could test higher, right? And if Bitcoin is going to go to some of those higher levels I was talking about on the weekly chart, you know, I think it makes a lot of sense that altcoins would also do something very similar. So if we are going to retest the top of the range, we would be looking at somewhere more up around $4.58 up towards, call it $4.95. And then double top swing fail area would be basically from $5.35 up to $5.90. Obviously very big ranges, but that's because it's a daily chart. Weekly will look the same, basically the exact same. And notice the weekly as well. Notice we have that structure break, right? We had this high, we have a higher high, and lowest point between the two. Whether you want to call it this or this, they were both broken. So that uptrend was broken. At that point, that's where I like to look for STUBER fibs. So if this was a 5-minute, I would be looking for shorts up in this, well, basically this whole range here is where I would be laddering shorts into. So there is resistance up ahead if it ends up climbing higher. But yeah, we're going to have to see what happens there. The DXY. This is one I have not looked at this probably since my last stream. Let me zoom out a little because I don't remember exactly what I was looking at last time I had this chart up. Looks like I was on the monthly. So DXY, yeah, if you're, you mentioned looking for buying USD. We are technically getting close to support. I will give it that. Let me just check something with STUBER fibs. See, guys, when I talk about these fib pockets being perfect bull and bear traps, I mean, notice even the US dollar, this is a huge pull, okay? This is a monthly chart. This goes back to, well, 2001. This is 25 years of data in this chart here. and still respected it. Look how perfectly that retested the 786, 886 box. And then we're starting to see some resistance there. So if we're going to do a full market cycle type of move with the DXY, it's very possible that we end up coming down to these levels. Again, does it have to happen? Absolutely not. A lot can happen in a monthly time frame. But basically that would be looking for some sort of a retrace, a full retrace towards my 786. But yeah, like I said, there is still horizontal support very nearby. If we lose that line, flip it, do the SR flip, at that point, I think we're very clearly coming down to this level. But so far, support is support until it's broken. Let's zoom into some shorter time frames because you're probably not trading the monthly there. What do we got here? If I really zoom in, this, interesting where we ended up getting rejected. But just looking at the 4 hour, you guys, here's a low, lower low, highest point between the two is my confirmed lower high. And notice where we ended up getting stopped there, where we ended up running into resistance was right on that lower high structure on this midterm trend of the 4 hour. The fact that it is bouncing very quickly here, I think that's showing some strength. Quite honestly, I think that looks good. With the Trendmaster indicator, we got a buy signal as well. Something to consider with that is it is obviously downtrending, right? We have a downtrend of lower buy signals, lower sell signals. So it makes a lot of sense that we would print another lower sell signal. But that being said, using those signals as far as resistance, I would look for the pivotal point, which would be back here. Since our last sell signal, resistance should be up here. So if I just put a line here, that's definitely a level of interest for me where I'd be looking at something, even if it's going to get front run a little bit, looking at something like the 786, 886. So there will be a resistance because obviously the dollar has been in a huge downtrend basically since January? Yeah, probably January, the same time as Bitcoin basically. But yeah, it's been in a serious downtrend. Eventually downtrends break, but as it goes right now, the trend is your friend until the end. So if we can break this level here, I think then it's an easy shot up to this purple box, but we're going to have to see. So when is alt season? All right. Here's my thought on altcoin season. One is actually Bitcoin dominance. I have mixed feelings about it. It is still climbing. So yeah, if that breaks, maybe that'll be a good sign for the altcoin season. But so far, Bitcoin dominance is in a huge uptrend. And I wouldn't really expect it to find much for resistance until we're getting pretty close. We're getting very close to that 786. So Bitcoin dominance is starting to get towards resistance here. I have a few concerns about this whole promised altcoin season. One is altcoins have been so diluted by the meme coin market, the whole Solana market. How much the Trump meme coin soaked up so much liquidity out of other altcoins. But not just that, right? Just the fact that there is millions and millions of different altcoins and meme coins at this point. So, previous market cycles, you could basically buy and hold anything and it was going to do well over time. Whereas I feel like you needed a lot more luck on your side this time, or more research and actually learning about the fundamentals and stuff. You guys know I'm not a fundamental guy. I'm a draw charts and trade them kind of a guy. But also on top of that is, even if we do start to see altcoins popping off, pay attention to how Bitcoin acts, because if altcoins are exploding to the upside, but Bitcoin continues trending to the downside. That's not necessarily showing a sign of strength in the market, because quite often what happens at the end of a market cycle, specifically the two that I was a part of, is that basically the end of the cycle is where Ethereum and other altcoins started running very aggressively while Bitcoin was selling off. So that was kind of, to me, looks more like the one last final hurrah, the final, pump the market and get out while they can kind of a thing before the actual collapse. Whereas if altcoins and Bitcoin all start moving together in a very healthy way, and they're all just very, very healthily trending to the upside, I think that would show a great deal of strength at that point. So kind of depends how altcoins react and how they act, and how Bitcoin reacts to that, in my opinion. So we're going to have to see. I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. I do think we'll get some sort of an alt season, but it may be slim pickings for which ones actually do well. And again, it might just be a final push kind of a thing. But I mostly trade Bitcoin. I'm not a fundamental guy with altcoins and stuff like that. So by all means, do your own research on that sort of thing. I just think that so many people just got it in their heads. Oh, previous market cycles, there was easy altcoin seasons. We've had a couple alt seasons this cycle already, but they still weren't all that easy to play. You still had to pick the right coin rather just buying a handful of whatever the hell you wanted, right? Tyler Burton. Is this the Burton that I think it is? I will check out Solana. Is this the Tyler Burton? Solana. See, Solana, in my opinion, looks pretty rough. This is a daily chart, but there's some very serious structure that ended up breaking, because we had this high, higher high. Lowest point between the two would be right here. And we've obviously broken that structure. So as far as a short setup, I mean, to be fair, it could go very high, right? That's a very nice swing to the upside if it ends up getting up towards 253, 273, as you can see here, even 295. Obviously a very massive swing to the upside. But I'm just saying that if we end up getting up there, understand that all-time highs is not necessarily guaranteed, because structure has changed here. We don't have a nice, healthy uptrend anymore at this point. If we set new highs, we set new highs, then whatever, the bear structure is invalidated then, and then we start longing pullbacks again. Let's zoom in a little bit. Let's check the 4 hours. See, the 4 hours broke some structure. I like to see that. The fact that we had this would have been our lower high. Going to make this yellow because we had this low and we had a lower low, highest point between the twos right here. Where did we end up? Did we break the 115? Very, very slightly. That's a tough one. I don't like the fact that we ended up getting above the highs here and then dropping them. But that being said, this is technically a nice structure break to the upside, right? We have broke that confirmed lower high. It's just the fact now that if this was a lower time frame, once again, I would be looking for a pullback before longing into this breakout, right? I would be looking at something more so like this. That doesn't mean that it's going to happen, but if I was looking for my ideal trade setup, I would be hoping for a dump to the downside to these levels and then long, and be looking to play the bounce from there. So I don't know if it's going to happen, but that's kind of what I'd be looking for. So it is nice that the 4 hour did break that structure, right? It's just that it doesn't look overly strong because we couldn't hold this old resistance as support. We're still trading below it a little bit. oops, take a look at some shorter time frames. We can look at the 5 minute. Would you just look at it? What do we have here? So obviously we lost some structure here and started trending down ever since. So this is a little bit risky, but notice that because this is just a wick, right? Since this was just a wick and then we closed candle bodies below this, that was a perfect swing fail for anyone looking for a short at that time. That would have been absolutely perfect with a nice tight stop loss. Obviously I wasn't. I don't have a position on Solana. But the fact that we got that, even though it's just a wick, it is technically higher, right? Higher, confirmed higher, well, confirmed low of the range, I suppose. So let's pull a fib from there up to where we topped. So, okay, well, this is going to be mixed signals as well. I actually didn't realize that it had already hit this pocket. So the bullish scenario here has already played out a couple times. Right, the fact that we dropped into my STUBER fib pocket and we hit the first take profit and we did it a second time. So it's very possible that that support has already done its job and that has already played out. At this point, longing this support again as we keep testing it, it's just getting weaker and weaker as we test it more and more. So there's a little bit of added risk there. I mean, support is support until it's broken. It's just when I look for these Fibonacci pullbacks, I only really like to play them the first time because generally speaking, when they get tested the first time, the market maker, whoever, there's very often some sort of a reaction there the first time. But as you keep testing it, I mean, think of it, if you take a hammer to a cinder block wall, I think it was Sammy Loyal I heard say this one time, but if you keep tapping away at it, eventually, the first tap, nothing's going to happen, right? It might not break. But as you sit there and keep tapping away at it, eventually the cracks are going to start to form. And eventually you're getting through. So just a little bit of an analogy there for what could happen if we keep testing this support level, basically. Okay, it's clearly not the Burton I'm thinking of then. Love a chance to pick up more at about 100. I mean, yeah. Let me zoom out a little bit again. Yeah, it's not impossible. Like I said, it doesn't mean that we have to go down to those levels. But as far as, especially for trading leverage, I'm a little more picky with my entries, right? If I was looking to spot accumulate this, just the fact that we even broke the downtrend, I'd probably already be starting. I'm personally not that interested right now. But as far as leverage trading specifically, I like to be much more picky with my entries. And that's where I would only be willing to long this if we get my ideal setup, basically. Ooh, look at that nice little lower sell signal here. But yeah, guys, I am getting hungry and I am planning to barbecue some steak in a couple minutes and drink a beer. So I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. So yeah, you guys, thank you so much for being here with me. Thank you for joining. If you've appreciated my level head here and you've appreciated some of my trading strategies, just some of my overall thoughts on the market, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss these streams. And as I mentioned, if you want access to my private Telegram channel where I share some of my theories, some of my trade setup ideas, just my overall thoughts on the markets in general, there is a link down below for that, as well as the QR code on the screen. And with that, for those of you who are in the Telegram, I will be keeping in touch with you guys. For everyone else, thank you so much for joining. With that, I'm out. Stay safe, my friends. Peace. I will probably be doing another stream. Probably not tomorrow. I have a few things I got to get done. But Wednesday, I'm planning to stream again. So keep your eyes out for that. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss it. With that, I'm out. Peace.